Hello, welcome back to the True Crime Guys podcast. I'm Owen.
And I'm Michael.
What's up, creepers? How we doing?
Ooh, man, I'm doing good, man. I'm excited. I like this case.
You like this case?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fun to study. I think it's going to be, there's a lot of conversation to be had.
You ready to get kinky?
Yeah, of course. I'm always down for
I gotta preface this case by saying being kinky is not a crime. However, when you are willing to kill over it, over your sexual tendencies, like the stuff you want to do to get a little freaky in the sack, you're willing to kill over that, then it is a crime at that point. But
Yeah, but I think this
find a partner that suits you,
right,
as far as sexually.
right. But I think this murder was more about money than that sort of thing. But I don't know.
You don't think if old Jane was into the same stuff, was into the BDSM, that he would have just stuck with her and not had to have, I don't know, because he was the type of guy that it was never enough. He always wanted more, so he would have wanted another, obviously, as we saw, he would have wanted another partner. He wanted 2 women at home.
That's right.
And all that, so.
But he also grew up very privileged as well, which we'll talk about. So,
Yeah.
he's probably never told no in his entire life. So.
What kind of surprised me the most about this case was that they had a 26-year marriage, right?
Right.
And they had grown kids that moved out and everything, and everything was fine. And then it's like as soon as the kids moved out, it's almost like he just went into full freak mode.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you got a lot more free time, I think, when your kids are gone.
Idle hands are the devil's playground, right?
Right. Right. And he also was having a little sexual troubles too. So he's probably looking outside the box. It was a perfect storm, man, for him.
Case of the floppy dick.
That's right. You can't.
Dude, you know what? I was thinking about that too while studying this case. How many people sadly have been killed over erectile dysfunction? You know what I mean? Some of the angriest men we've ever studied, they had floppy dick syndrome.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's kind of in our DNA. And I think as men,
how many lives has Viagra saved when you really think about it?
That's right. See, it's not just for men; it's for everybody. It's keeping everybody alive,
saving women's lives.
That's right. Shit, it's saving everyone's lives.
Right. All right. Well, let's dive into it. Let's hear your intro, buddy.
All right, let's do it.
To my mother-in-law.
Judge, could we ask that he turn around and address the court? Thank you.
To my mother-in-law and to all of her family who have known me for 30 years, I have provided love and comfort and caring for the entire family. Their daughter, number one, throughout my life, that I knew Jane. I loved her, I comforted her, I delivered both of our children. I love my Jane dearly and have done absolutely nothing to harm her. I did not murder her, I did not conspire with anyone, especially Mr. Gentz, nor did I solicit him for this crime. But I want to say to Jane's family, I want to say to my mother and my children, that I will never, ever stop fighting for justice and the truth until my hands are raw, blood comes from my eyes, and I take my last breath. I will appeal these charges as I am innocent of anything to do with my wife's death.
Master Bob, you're a disaster, Bob. Dick always placid, Bob. It's not her fault. Everywhere you go, people never tell you no. You thought you were running the show, but you got caught.
I went over to the little box. Next thing I know, he pulls a gun on me and says, shut her up. They were arguing still. And he says, do it now. I broke her now. Yes, I'll be honest, I did do it. But meanwhile, after she was dead, he walks over, her top was open. He goes over to her and he says, I'm sorry, baby, I didn't mean it.
It's plain to see you lack the capacity to be the man that you should be. You deserve what you got.
And I'm reminded, Your Honor, of the story of Job. Now, I will admit clearly that I am nowhere near as blameless as Job was before the Lord. I have done things in my life that I look back and I'm not 100% proud of. But I had absolutely, and I hope my mother-in-law's listening to this, I had absolutely nothing to do with my wife's death.
Master Bob, you're still a disaster, Bob. Your dick's still flaccid, Bob, and it's still not her fault.
All right, our case this week is Master Bob Bashara.
Master Bob.
We'll get into it.
You're saying Bashara.
We'll get into it a little bit more later, why they call him Master Bob.
Right, and if you're familiar with the BDSM community, you probably already know.
Yeah,
You probably get that idea.
we already alluded to the little bit of BDSM stuff. We'll get into the freaky stuff in a bit, people. But let's start at the beginning of how these people came to be known nationwide. In 2012, Bob Bashara was 56 years old with two grown children, Jessica and Robert, who were 22 and 26 respectively. They had recently moved out. I believe Robert had gotten a job in another state, and Jessica was off to college. And Bob and his wife Jane had a seemingly perfect life. They'd been married for 26 years.
Right.
They were respected members of their community, which they lived in a very high-end, fancy place called Gross Pointe Park, just outside of Detroit, Michigan.
Right. It's a
man,
very well-off
So
suburb
nice.
out there. It's
Yeah,
almost like its own little entity, its own little town. You know what I mean? It was kind of like its own class.
It is like its own little world. Yeah, if you look it up, it's pretty crazy like how minimal the crime was there. They hadn't up until this case, they hadn't had a murder in over 20 years.
That's incredible.
You couldn't get any safer.
Right.
Yeah. You couldn't, especially when you're bordering Detroit, which had one of the higher murder rates in the country.
Right.
You're that close. It makes you wonder, like, what do they have, like a fucking moat around this place? Or it's like,
well,
I was looking at the map. I'm like, how is this possible? How does some of that not just kind of leach naturally into Grosse Pointe?
Well,
I
because
don't get it.
because it's more heavily protected, just like every other well-off suburb in the United States and probably all over the world.
Yeah, but like gated communities are overrated. Literally, all you got to do is kind of like sit there and wait for someone to go through and just follow them. Most of the time, they're not going to like stop it. Like, do you belong in
Right.
here? You just kind of can follow people.
Right,
in.
but you know as well as I do that criminals are lazy. They're going to take the path of least resistance, and
That's
having
true.
a gate, that's just one more thing they gotta, that's just one more literal hurdle, possibly. So I don't think that's the way they want to go typically. And then you have security guys that drive around. I know they can't do much, but just having those extra eyes driving
Their
around.
presence, yeah.
Having that presence. It discourages criminals. It does.
Yeah, I guess. And then also, it seems like a community like this, everybody probably knew each other. Bob was well known. And so, like, if they see a car or a person that seems out of place,
Right.
they probably are all communicating right away. Probably a lot of housewives on the phone immediately
Right.
if someone's parked in front of the house or something
And
like
I
that.
think Bob was a prime example of the typical resident of this area. Somebody who was, had spent generations in this area. Because didn't he grow up in Grosse Pointe and then ended up staying there? He was raised in Grosse Pointe, was he not?
Yeah. That was all he cared about was Grosse Pointe. He would never leave.
Yeah.
And we saw it later when he was buying another house with his mistress. He literally was buying a house right down the street because he was never going to leave Grosse Pointe Park.
Genius, just genius.
Right. He came from, I actually got a book for this case. Hold on, let me pull it up. He came from a family of really successful men, like his father and his grandfather. Like it kind of like kept getting more successful until Bob, and then Bob just kind of lived off their reputation. He got a bunch of
Right.
properties that he was renting out, but they were kind of gifted to him by his dad.
They were absolutely gifted to him, right? They were already up and running. He just kind of
Yeah.
took them over and started managing
And
them
they
and
still-
collecting the money.
And they still weren't really making any money.
Right.
So the book I got was The Sadist, the Hitman, and the Murder of Jane Bashara by George Hunter and Lynn Rosenthal. So
Sound
good book, really detailed.
excellent.
I'd say good book. It was a little boring at times. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, this case has a lot of mundane stuff. There's a lot of stuff about the trial. Like if you go on YouTube, you might slip into a very boring video vortex. Like some of it's rough. You kind of have to wade through it. There's a lot of testimony video and stuff like that. But
a lot of stuff about Bob's character. He was a two-faced bastard.
Right.
Let's just put it that way. He had the public. I'm going to do it to the person out there who gave us a bad review for bringing up old Gacy, but he had some Gacy to him. He had that public persona.
Yeah.
Like the life of the party. He was in a bunch of different local clubs, and he was involved in charities and all this stuff, but at the same time he was ripping people off all the time. He was a slumlord essentially. Like these properties that he was managing, he would go around and bully the people, tell them that they owed him money even though they didn't,
right.
and he would basically like threaten them, like, you have no idea what I could do to you, and this type of shit.
Right. And then when the city or the county or whoever's over those areas would pressure him into doing something about their properties, he would flip it around on them and say, oh, well, you just don't want these people living in these communities. You don't want these ethnicities or these economical class of people living in these communities. He was trying to like turn it around. That's how, I don't know. I guess that's just how narcissistic this guy was. It's like he almost believed that. He believed that theory in his head.
Right.
You could tell it by the way he said it. To him, he wasn't lying, or he wasn't
Right.
making up a story. And you see that a lot throughout this entire case.
Yeah, and he spent a lot of money keeping up his image to the point where his wife made a ton of money. She had a huge 401k.
Self-made too.
She was very smart with money, and he would just blow it all. They kept taking out loans on their mortgage, like 7 different times. They took out hundreds of thousands of dollars because they had such high property value in this fancy ass, Gross Pointe Park, the area they were living in. That the value of their home kept going up, and they kept taking out loans on that shit. So. I also want to quickly, before I forget, we forgot last time, but the person who suggested this case to us, Jennifer Carbot, thank you.
Yeah, don't make me
sent us
write
an
another
email all
song
about
for
this
him.
case, so.
Jesus, it's a lot of
Right.
work just forgetting somebody. No,
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Exactly. Yeah, so Bob and his wife Jane seemingly had this perfect life in Grosse Pointe. Jane was a native of Mount Clemens, Michigan, and held a bachelor's and master's degree in business administration from Central Michigan and University of Detroit Mercy. Both had stable jobs. Jane is a marketing agent for Kima Services, and Bob is a business manager who bought and rented properties around Grosse Pointe. Now, I always say he's successful. Bob, as we mentioned, he had a lot of properties, but he wasn't making any money on them. They were just kind of staying afloat. So I guess it was still good investments because property is almost always a good investment, especially in this area. I'm sure the value of the properties were going up, but as far as like what he was paying to have the property versus what he was getting back, it was kind of just breaking even.
Right. He probably wasn't doing a lot of the
So,
work himself, I would imagine, or he didn't have people that he worked with regularly, or he may have just been he was probably doing the bare minimum, honestly. It seemed like from his
Right.
he didn't have a lot of time to take care of these properties because of his other activities.
Oh
You know
no!
what
I
I'm
mean,
saying?
he would just bully the people if they would blow up his phone saying you need to come fix this because he's basically their landlord. He would either not answer the phone or he would threaten them, be like, he would tell them like we mentioned that they owed him money or whatever.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
So yeah, he was, like we said, kind of a slumlord in the area.
Right.
Bob Bashara was the son of a state appellate judge. He himself was head of the Rotary Club, a deacon of the Episcopal Church, and a booster of the local country club, a scion of power in the community of Grosse Pointe Park. So very powerful man, it seemed, or he had a big image,
Yeah.
Bob and Jane lived in an upscale colonial house in Grosse Pointe Park. In addition to their home, Bob owned a restaurant, the Hard Luck Cafe on Mack Avenue in Nottingham, which plays a big role in this. The Hard Luck Cafe will keep reappearing as he had a nice little dungeon underneath it, we come to find out later.
That's right.
Little playground for old Master Bob.
Right.
Bob and Jane's children were finally grown and out of the house, as we had mentioned. They were free to start the second act of their lives together, it seemed, or not. If
Yeah,
you,
well, they were still
look at it
free
from
to
Bob's
do it.
point.
I mean, that's true. Now, whether they're going to do it or not, we'll see.
You would think this is an exciting time, right? This is an exciting time for most couples. Like you're young, you have kids, you're excited, but at a certain point when they're like, in their late teens, you're kind of like start looking forward to, like we mentioned, that second act where it's like, okay, when they move out, we can have time to ourselves again, like we had before we had children.
Well, not only that, I feel like a lot of people see it as getting their identity back, getting that independence back. You're no longer so and so's dad or so and so's mom. You're back to being you again.
You're Master Bob.
Yeah, you're Master Bob. You're Master Bob now. You can be whoever you want.
Exactly. So this leads, so that, they had this perfect this life, it seemed, and until one day, where they become national headlines. On January 24th, 2012, Bob Bashara reports his wife missing to Gross Pointe Park police. She had been last seen by coworkers that afternoon. Bob filed a missing persons report with the Gross Pointe police. So he kind of blows up the 911 dispatch that evening. It's
all a cover.
I think it's a Tuesday.
Right.
It's a Tuesday. It's a normal work day, and like his story was he tells the dispatcher that he had gotten a call from his wife around 4 p.m. that she was leaving work and heading home, and he was at the cafe, the Hard Luck Cafe,
Of course.
that we mentioned.
Probably not having a
doing
sandwich.
Right. Yeah. Buying time
Right.
there, creating an alibi, essentially. And he told her he'd be home in a little while, and they had supposedly had plans to do their taxes that night. So she was going to be home probably an hour or two before him, but by the time he got home around 7 p.m., she wasn't there. However, he could tell that she had been there. He said that the TV in the basement was on. He could tell that there was some stuff moved around, that she had come home, but she had left. Her car was gone now. Her purse was gone, like some items and whatnot, and he hadn't heard from her. He's calling her phone. She's not answering, and it's not like her to do this.
Right.
So he starts freaking out, it seems, calling the 911 dispatch several times, panicking. Finally, they send someone out. This is a high-end area, so I feel like in Detroit, maybe like the east side of Detroit, like this kind of call, they would have been like, well, give it 48 hours before we can really do anything missing persons wise. But because it's Gross Pointe Park, they're like, all right, well, we'll send someone out. They're not doing anything anyway. the patrol cars in that area, what else do they have to do?
Yeah, exactly. They're probably having a coffee right now.
Yeah. So they send a policeman out who looks around the house, takes a report. The police also put out the word for the patrolmen in the area and also in Detroit to keep a lookout for Jane's black Mercedes SUV, which she would be driving when she left. The next morning, a tow truck driver would find her SUV, the black Mercedes, in an alley, which I'm sure stuck out like a sore thumb because it was on the east side of Detroit,
Right.
In an alley, and it's just like, this doesn't look right. So the tow truck driver called it in, thinking it was most likely a stolen vehicle. He was informed, however, that it was involved in a missing persons case, and the police were called out to the scene. The tow truck driver didn't really take too good of a look at the SUV, apparently, or either that or the windows were really dark because in the back seat was Jane Bashara's body.
Right.
Police discovered her body in the back seat. They reported that she had died from strangulation and that she had bruises and broken fingernails, indicated that she had fought hard for her life. Because of the relative affluence, upscale reputation, and overall lack of crime in the Grosse Pointe community, local press reported every aspect of this killing at every turn. So it became a huge story because we mentioned there hadn't been someone from Grosse Pointe Park murdered in 20 plus years. So it was a big story. However, if it was just down the road over where her body was found, if Jane was from the east side of Detroit, it wouldn't have even probably made the newspaper. It would have just been another.
Right, it's the fact of who she is and where she's from. That's exactly right.
Yeah. So on the evening of January 25th, 2012, a candlelight vigil was held on the lawn at Grosse Pointe Park, Grosse Pointe South High School, where Jane had served as president of the Mothers Club. The Bashara's minister led the gathering in prayer. Bob did attend the vigil. However, he didn't speak publicly at the gathering. Her funeral was held at Grosse Pointe Memorial Church and attracted hundreds of people. So Bob's there, soaking in all the sympathy from everyone. Mm-hmm. Everyone's just so sad for him. They wouldn't think in a million years that he would have anything to do with it.
You think he's still comfortable at this point? Because I kind of felt like maybe he didn't speak because he was like, whoa, this is more attention than I thought was going to happen. I don't think you can ever prepare for the way a close-knit community might respond to such a tragedy. You understand what I'm saying? Kind of like with Chris Watts. It seemed like when they did his interview, he was like, whoa, you could tell it was just something he did not plan for. He was like,
I think Bob was a little more ready.
Okay.
But this part of the case does kind of seem very similar to Chris Watts, doesn't it? How all eyes are on the husband. Mm-hmm. And I think Bob did a much better job of at least showing some, even though it was fake sympathy, he was kind of ridiculed and looked at sideways. Bob was, because when he did start doing public interviews, he would cry, right? But there were no tears that would come out. So people started kind of questioning that. Like, look, if you look closely, there's no tears.
Yeah, that's awkward. When someone's trying to cry, oh.
Right.
That's just
Like you see them poking themselves in the eye
yeah,
and
like,
shit.
what are you doing? What are you? Jeez. Why's your face so? The sun's not even out. Like, what are you?
Why'd you just pull like a salt shaker out of your pocket and rub your eyes with it?
Is that an onion? What the
doing?
hell are you doing?
All right. Speaking of onion, man, I have my thumb wrapped up. I just chopped my thumb almost in half, cutting an onion Friday morning.
Jesus. You got to be careful
Yeah.
with that.
Well, that's what happens when you have kids. They distract the shit out of you. That's what was going
you're
on.
right
I was
about
cutting an
that.
onion. My son's right next to me, like, can I help? Can I help? And it just like blah, blah, blah in my ear. And I'm like, I look over at him, and the next thing you know, my thumb became the onion.
No, you cannot help.
Sliced right through my nail and everything. It was brutal.
Oh yeah, I've been there, man.
I wasn't going to talk about it. I never thought in a million years we'd be talking about an onion in this case. So, I had to bring
Well,
it
there
up
you go.
just
You're
because
welcome.
it's just too much of a coincidence. So the investigation of Bashara's death was conducted jointly by the Gross Pointe Park Police and the Detroit Police Department. The Michigan State Police also participated in the investigation. And this is another perk to affluence, right? Because you really think, like, as we mentioned, if Jane was just your average east side of Detroit citizen that got murdered, that the state police and like 3 different departments would get involved.
Dude, if this is an East Side Detroit murder, I think Bob gets off.
Right?
know,
They were just
ironically.
like, up, open and shut case. It's a robbery. Let's move along here.
Exactly. I think if they're both from a different part of Detroit, I think it's open and shut. He's done. He's off.
Well, that's why I think that's what Bob was hoping for. I think that's why the body was placed where it was, right?
Probably. Yeah.
Oh, they were just hoping that they would just buy it. Detroit police would just buy it as another robbery type of thing,
Yep.
However, on January 27th, the Gross Pointe Park Police Chief David Hiller announced that Bob Bashara was a person of interest in the investigation. Well, of course, they always start close, the nucleus,
Right.
the people closest to him. The husband's always the one they look sideways at first, because usually it is the husband.
Right. Yeah.
To be honest.
True. But I don't think Bob's freaking out just yet. You know what I
No,
mean?
they gotta have hard
Yeah, they
evidence
don't
to
have
get
anything.
him, because he's got a good reputation in the community and everything. So. He said there were no other persons of interest at the time. Sources also reported that Bob Bashara had taken and failed a lie detector test about his involvement. Another similarity to the Chris Watts case that we did last week.
Yeah, very similar. Too bad there's not video of that, though. I'd really like to see that.
Right. By January 31st, 2012, investigators revealed that they believe Jane Bashara had been murdered in her home and then placed in her SUV. They also had some questions about the timeline, the holes that were in Bob Bashara's timeline. He was acting a little strangely that day when he was at the cafe, the Hard Luck Cafe. The bartender that works there, when the police talked to her, she said, it was kind of odd that he kept kind of announcing what he was going to do that day. He'd never done that before. He showed up, he was drinking something that he normally doesn't drink.
Yeah.
Like he normally just drank, I want to say like a Miller Lite or whatever. He just like drank like a normal domestic beer. That day he was drinking liquor. And then he kept saying, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go. And then he was seen out in the alley, like sweeping the alley. He had never done anything like that before.
Right. He's just
so very strange
He's
behavior.
trying to be seen there. He's just walking in the door. Hi, everybody. Bob Bashara
exactly.
is here. You know,
Right.
Bob Bashara would have a liquor.
My wife goes missing. You know where I was.
Bob Bashara was here. I mean, if anyone's asking.
Right. He's like making people take pictures with him and shit.
Oh God.
Yeah, and even though he was there, he did announce to the bartender that he was going to do something for like an hour or whatever. I forget what it was, but he had left for a little bit at a certain point and returned.
Okay.
Yeah. Also around this time, police began receiving calls from people stating that Bob had some secrets, that he wasn't quite who everyone thought he was. His public persona, he had another side to him.
Right.
The Master Bob side.
That's right.
We'll get more into that in a minute. However, on February 1st, a kind of a turn in this case happens. This is February 1st, a few days after the investigation began. It was reported that Joseph Gentz, a mentally disabled handyman with a reported IQ of 67, who rented a property from Bob Bashara, had confessed to police that he helped dispose of Jane Bashara's body after she was murdered in her garage. So he's saying that he murdered Jane on Bob's demand, basically. Bob made him do it.
Right.
He told police that Bob paid him $2,000 and an old Cadillac to murder his wife. Quote, Bob Bashara offered me money. He threatened me if I did not kill her. I killed Jane Bashara because of Bob Bashara offered me money and threatened to kill me.
Sounds rehearsed.
It's clear that this... Yeah, well, it's also... He's not...
I know.
I mean, we mentioned his IQ and everything. He's on that border of... so it was clear that the 6'4", 260-pound Gentz was no one to fool with. And also, he looked eerily similar to Ron
Dude,
Perlman from Sons of Anarchy.
I thought that
it's like he is his fucking twin.
Because
it's crazy.
Well, because when you first see him, you don't know that he has any mental disabilities or anything. Like until he opens his mouth to talk, it's like, holy shit! Like this is a monster, scary of a man right here. Like this guy could be capable of anything. And then he talks, and you're like, oh no, he was manipulated. You know? What I mean?
He doesn't sound that. Like, he sounds a little bit like a sweetheart.
Yeah,
right?
he sounds like.
And
a
he also
giant.
didn't. Yeah, and he didn't seem to have that much trouble talking either. Like in the interviews I heard him, he didn't sound like he was mentally disabled at all to me.
No, I'm just saying, like, just his tone and phrasing and just the facial gestures and things like that. You could tell that he was, you know what I mean? Wasn't the smartest, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I think what it was, the book went into his background quite a bit, actually. And I think what it was is, I think his personality lended itself for people to believe that he was slow, but more what it was is he was so overly eager to please people because he was picked on a ton as a kid, and he just always had that need to be liked. And like the more a person would kind of crap on him and treat him badly, the more he wanted them to like him, is what it sounds like from the book. They described his upbringing and all that. He'd had a few failed marriages. He had a daughter. Like he'd had quite a background, but more than anything, he just wanted people to like him. And I think that's where a guy like Bob would come in and take advantage of something like that.
So, okay. First off, I'm not a 100% believer in the IQ test. I don't think everyone who does well on an IQ test is smart, and I don't think people that do bad. But what's with are stupid? But what's with the 67? Is that confirmed? Is that just something that's thrown in there? What's up with that?
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm talking about. Did you hear?
We hear that a lot
about that in his background. That never came up.
It came up in every article. It came up in the book. The only differences I heard was 68 a couple times, and then I heard 67 a bunch of times. I went with 67 because I heard it more often. But I don't know where that came from. I don't know how old that was. I don't know if the police administered that test or what happened. But
is that a high school test?
We hear that so often, though.
Test?
Yeah, we hear that so often, right? Like so many cases we covered where they report someone's IQ, and you're like, well, when was that done? What kind of? Because they have online ones. I took an online one, and it said I was like a borderline genius, and I'm like, this shit can't be accurate.
Right.
Because I'm not a fucking borderline genius. I know that.
They're strange, man. It's like I just don't believe them. I just don't. You can't measure intelligence in everyone the same way. It's just not. It's impossible.
Yeah, there's a lot of different types of intelligence,
That's
right?
exactly right.
So another quote, "That's it. I'm coming back here with a gun. I'm going to take out everyone," Gentz said as he told a bartender at the Texas Bar and Grill, a local drinking spot on Detroit's east side, a few weeks before the murder. He had lost a fight in the place during a Christmas party, and his ego was still smarting from the whipping. So a little bit on his background. He had been in and out of institutions. He'd had a violent past. He had been diagnosed in the past with bipolar disorder and intermittent explosive disorder. He'd been hospitalized multiple times for psychiatric treatment and was blind in one eye from a birth defect.
God, poor guy.
As I mentioned, a rough past.
Okay, but
I think more than anything, I think he just had anger issues and a need to be liked, like we talked about.
Right. And I don't know the difference, and I'm sure someone will write to us. I'm not going to take the time to look it up right now, but I feel like whatever made them think that he had intermittent explosive disorder, couldn't that be linked in with bipolar as well? I mean, the way you have the ups and downs. I don't understand. I feel like that's very redundant, saying he has bipolar disorder and intermittent explosive disorder. I mean, maybe he has.
I can see this.
You see what I'm saying?
It's like when his other side, when the other side of the bipolar disorder is angry, that's what's the difference between that and the explosive, intermittent explosive disorder?
Right. I feel like that was thrown in there to make him seem more violent. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Just keep piling on shit.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, so on February 2nd, 2012, several publications reported that Bob Bashara, quote, allegedly led a double life centering on the underground world of BDSM and sexual deviancy with other women other than his wife. It was also reported that he maintained a sex dungeon in the basement of the Hard Luck Lounge, located in a building owned by Bob Bashara on Mack Avenue in Gross Pointe Park. And he'd been partaking in many other locations in this, too. He had actually screwed a guy that was also involved in the BDS community. I heard this in the book. There was some guy that had a big property and he wanted to put in a big ass sex dungeon. And he's like, I have enough money for everything inside and the big building itself, but not enough for the concrete. And Bob basically was like, oh, I'll cover it. You know, it was like whatever, 40 grand for the concrete. It was like a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was a big ass place, dude, with everything like Sibians and like sex swings and you name it.
Right.
So he kept leading the guy on saying, yeah, I'll send you the check. I'll give you a check, whatever. So just the guy's like, all right, well, I got to set up the appointment for the concrete. The concrete gets poured and Bob never pays him. But yet he continued to go to the parties and everything else. And so
yikes.
that's the kind of guy Bob was.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. But old Bob had his own little dungeon inside or underneath the Hard Luck Lounge as well.
Right.
And he was so scummy with his wife too, leading up to this. Like he'd really I want to say the judge, when she announced his sentence later on, she really tore him down, and she said, not only did you kill her, but you also killed her soul leading up to this, because you just your selfishness and you were made her raise those kids, and you were just a selfish person, and you took every bit of her by making her do stuff she didn't want to do. There was a certain point in the book also that brought up where he had actually, his wife she was trying to keep the relationship going. She knew that it was falling apart or whatever, but there was a point where she was like, let's go out. I want to go out and kind of rekindle our relationship. Let's go out to dinner and go dancing. And he's like, okay. And so they set an appointment at a restaurant or whatever. He leaves her there, stiffs her. She shows, she's at the fucking restaurant alone. She's calling him, and he's like, yeah, I'm at the Hard Luck Lounge or whatever. Why don't you come over here? And she's like, whatever. She goes over there, and she gets there, and he's not there either. She's like, I'm downstairs. He was in his fucking dungeon, and he was trying to, basically, when she got down there, he was waiting for her with some other woman, and he was like, let's have a threesome. And she was like, are you fucking kidding me? Wanted to go out to rekindle our relationship, to go dancing, not to fucking have a threesome with some stranger.
Wow, didn't talk to her at all about
and so
it. Just fucking did.
No, just
he's a piece of shit.
No,
man.
just
that's what I'm telling you. Never
threw that on her, and then
no, the dude does.
It gets worse. Yeah, it gets worse. So she freaks out, right? And so his response to that is he takes the girl into the room, and she stands outside the door while he has an hour session with her, and comes back out of the room, and she proceeds to tear him down again. I don't know why she even stuck around at that point, but that's what the judge meant by stealing her soul before he even killed her. He's just she was a wholesome, good woman, and he was trying to drag her into this dark world he was a part of.
And the whole family.
And she wasn't a willing participant at all,
Yeah, and he defiled the name of not only her, but his children too. They're walking around as Basharas. I'm sure they probably still live in Michigan.
Yep.
I don't know, man.
Oh, for sure. There was at a certain point the daughter, when she realized her dad had done this, she ends up testifying against him and saying some of the stuff that she witnessed him doing growing up. He'd be watching pornography in the living room with his kids around, and she'd walk over and see it on the computer, just this disgusting stuff, and confront him about it, and he would just be like, yeah, whatever, here, and then just delete it, whatever. She caught a text that he had sent to some woman about getting on her knees and the Master Bob routine shit.
Right.
He'd gotten caught in that stuff several times. So he didn't know how to separate it. He didn't know how to. You can be kinky in your private life or whatever, but when your kid's around, fuck.
Yeah, let your kids make their own decisions on that sort of thing. God almighty. Yeah. All right.
So kind of another shocking turn in the case. After Joseph Gentz had walked in and confessed to killing Jane, the next day, February 3rd, he's released from custody without being charged. Kind of shocks everyone and scares everyone in the community. In subsequent interviews with local media, Gentz said that Bob had asked Joe to come over and move some boxes for him before trapping him and Jane in the garage at gunpoint and telling Gentz to, quote, shut her up. Gentz struggled with Jane before stomping on her neck and crushing her windpipe. So it's a really horrific scene that went down in the Bashara's garage. As we mentioned, Bob trapping the two of them in there. And basically, Jane's going Bob, what are you doing? Who's this guy? Stop him. And he's sitting there going, shut her up, telling Gentz to kill his wife, basically. And she knows what's going on the whole time.
And then now knowing what we know about Gentz and wanting to be a people pleaser, and this is someone he works for, right? Someone he rents from.
Exactly.
It's like he wants to stay in good standing with him. And I'm also sure this is someone who is not aware of how strong he is or what he's capable of at this time.
People knew Gentz was very strong.
Yeah, but I don't know if Gentz knew that. You see what I'm saying? I don't know, man. It's just a heartbreaking situation. I know there's not a lot of physical evidence to really tie it to what exactly happened here, other than the fact that she was killed by strangulation, which would assume that her windpipe was crushed, and then by Gentz's testimony, right? Because there's nothing else that could tie into physically into what happened. Is there?
Right.
That I'm missing?
Yeah, but I mean, also, why would Gintz lie? Gintz had no
I'm not
reason to
saying he's
lie about
lying.
what
I'm not
happened. He
saying
was
he's
already.
lying. I'm just saying.
I know, but to me, the evidence is the fact that Gintz. How can you not believe Gentz's story? Because he has no reason to lie. He's already basically putting himself in prison by coming out and confessing to this. So like, why? What does he have to gain from lying about how it happened or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, to me,
And also, I believe there was a shoe print on Jane's neck as well, which kind of
okay,
proves the story correct as well.
gotcha.
On February 4th, Bob Bashara commented, "I did not kill my wife. I have nothing to do with this." Now, when the investigation into Jane Bashara's death began, her husband's private double life wasn't publicly known. However, it didn't take long for investigators and the media to discover shocking details that painted a completely different picture of him. Multiple media sources also reported that Bob Bashara's relationship with an alleged mistress, Rachel Reen Gillett, who also had been employed in the Office of Alumni Affairs at Wayne State University. Gillett was fired after leaving the office on the day that Jane Bashara's body was discovered. And this was his main mistress. He was trying to actually, he was leading this woman on for a long time. He had met her on the website alt.com, where he had his whole Master Bob persona. And
He didn't even tell her he was married.
No.
Did he?
Well,
he told her he was divorced.
He told her that they were separated, but not, they hadn't filed the paperwork yet or whatever. And Rachel kept pushing him to file the paperwork. At a certain point, he told her that he did file the paperwork and she was requesting to see it. And he kept saying, well, I don't have it. The lawyer has it. And she's telling him make copies. And he just kept making excuses after excuses. She would just attempt to leave him over and over again. And he would keep writing these long emails about how we're meant to be together and I love you, blah, blah, blah. And she would keep coming back to him over and over again. We later find out
what
that
did she see?
he was a smooth talker, I guess, at least in email and whatnot. And
God, I guess.
we later find out that Bob participated in bondage, discipline, and sadomasochism with Rachel Gillett, shopped for homes with her, and repeatedly lied to her, including telling her that he was divorced. In fact, the home that Bob was buying with Rachel was set to close escrow the week that Jane was killed. That doesn't look good. You're closing on a house with your mistress, and your wife doesn't know about it, and then she comes up dead. Yeah, that's not good.
He's such an idiot.
Stuff keeps coming to my mind about that was talked about in the book too, like the emails that he would have these exchanges with women, the BDSM community from that alt.com website, and like Rachel, for instance, when they would have interactions through email, like she would have to capitalize him and lowercase herself because of the master slave relationship, like just little creepy shit like that. I found pretty interesting.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's typical in the community.
Yeah, I think it is. However,
okay.
we later hear some testimony about some women that he had met. There was a woman that he flew out to meet. I forget what state she lived in, but they had interacted on alt.com and stuff, and she potentially wanted to be a slave for Master Bob type of thing. And he set up a day and told his wife he was going out there on business. He was supposedly, testing out some new cleaning chemical or whatever. He also had a business where he sold chemicals for cleaning.
And perfect cover for traveling all over the place.
Yeah, and she wanted him to make more money, so she's like, "Oh, I think this is good. Bob's gonna go, get this new chemical, and maybe he'll start making money." However, he was going out to meet one of these potential slaves, and the woman later said in reports that he broke a lot of the rules of the BDSM stuff. Like he was overly, there's the whole safe word. You're supposed to, as the master, you're supposed to care for the person, you're not trying to hurt. You're trying to find that line where it's like pleasure, and then of course there's some pain mixed in with it. But there's a point where the pain can go too far. That's where the safe words come in. He didn't use any of these rules that they have in that community that she was expecting.
I mean, does that surprise you that
No.
that Bob Bashara thought the rules didn't apply to him?
Right.
I mean, this is so typical of him. And you know what? He was only in this community when he built that sex dungeon. I looked it up. He was only in the community for less than 3 years.
Right.
If you're in and I was trying to get some, trying to wrap my head around 3 years in BDSM, because I mean 3 years of anything sounds like a lot, but in that community it's really not. You're still a novice. You shouldn't be putting things out there saying, "Oh, I can teach you the ways of BDSM," or "I'll teach you how to be a slave," or he shouldn't even be calling himself a master, even if he is a dominant. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Because he's no master at this time.
Yeah.
So
this woman that he had gone to meet, he had talked a little bit about breath play with her, and she's like, "Oh, I've never done that," or whatever. And that's basically like choking, like the what's it called, autoerotic asphyxiation. And
Right.
so, like, supposedly when he got there to her apartment, the first thing he did was like go up behind her and like choke her unconscious from behind. Like, tell me that can't be like accepted in that community. You know what I mean? That's so
Wow.
dangerous.
No hello. No how are
Right.
you doing? No
Right?
nothing.
Just like
Okay.
full on, like she came to like all groggy, like in her bed, you know. And then also she said she was so beat up, like it took her months to recover just from like this one weekend spent with him. You know, that was way too far. So
Absolutely.
she was not interested in being a longtime slave of his after that. She kept communication with him, I think, more out of fear of cutting him off, like what he might do, because he knew where she lived now and everything. So
Right. I don't think there's any point in really mentioning her name. I'm sure she doesn't want to be associated
Right.
in this case. But I watched it. I watched her testify.
Yeah.
Did you watch that?
yep,
And she had talked about how one of the specific questions was, did you set up a safe word? And she was like, no. She's like, but it was my first time. She's
That's
like,
up
I
to the
knew,
master to
I
do
didn't
that, right?
know. Right. She said the master, he didn't say anything about a safe word. There was no safe word. And also he would hit her in areas where she specifically said she didn't want to be hit.
right,
You know what I mean? Like that's an example of taking it too far. If she wanted to be hit only on the buttocks or the thighs and he's like strapping her back,
yeah.
I mean, that's highly taboo in that community, from what I can tell.
Yeah. So we mentioned the main slave of Master Bob, Rachel Gillett, and we mentioned how they were set to close on escrow on the new house they were getting. So he had this master plan. You know, his new life was going to be with Rachel, and he also intended to find another slave, and he wanted a household with two women that were kind of serving him. And so Jane was not a part of this, and also she had a large 401k which contained over $800,000. So his plan was to buy this house with Rachel, cash in on Jane's 401k, and start a new life down the street in Gross Pointe Park with his soon-to-be new wife, Rachel, and a second wife slave. Police raided Gillett's home in early March 2012 after finding out about her. They stated that Gillett was not a person of interest, but left her home carrying 7 cardboard boxes and an evidence bag. Bashara's attorney told the press that the Basharas had, quote, an open marriage, which I think only Bob thought that. I don't think Jane was too happy about that.
That sounds accurate. Yeah.
I think she didn't want to blow up the marriage. I think she would kind of, maybe in a sense, she was like, just don't ask, don't tell type of thing for a little while there. But that's not what she wanted. You know, she was just doing that because she didn't want their marriage to end. And
You know what? I think she would have went along with it though. Honestly, like if he didn't hurt anybody and it was making him happy, I think she cared about him enough
yeah,
to actually let him have this side lifestyle. But it wasn't enough for him. He's got to have everything he wants.
yeah,
There's no compromise. There's no compromise when it comes to this guy.
that's true. Yeah, the ego was just so out of control.
Yep.
Bob continued to do interviews and maintained his innocence while playing the victim, saying he's only sorry that he exposed his family to Joe Gentz. His family stood by him during this time and believed he would never harm his wife. Bob had an online persona, as we mentioned, as Master Bob. One witness claimed he called himself a dominator and told her she deserved to be spanked. Bar employees and other regular customers confirmed that Bob Bashara and several other women regularly went into the basement. On some occasions, they took whips and bondage gear to the sex dungeon. The local news in the area, they actually did a tour of his sex dungeon after he had gotten busted or whatever, and like went down there.
Yeah.
I think it's on YouTube. Pretty small place.
Well,
But,
yeah. Well, you
quite
don't
creepy.
need that much room, I guess. Two
No.
people.
On March 3rd, 2012, Joe Gentz was arrested. So a month after he was released, they finally felt they had enough to rearrest him. And he was arrested in Mount Clemens, arraigned 3 days later on first-degree murder and conspiracy charges. The media circus would continue for months before police would finally bring Bob in on charges. Not for Jane's murder, however. They got him another way. This was very clever.
Yes, it was.
On June 27th, Bashara, accused of trying to have Gentz killed in jail, was arraigned on solicitation of murder charges. So
Well, if you ever had any doubt, there you go. Because
Yeah.
why would you kill the man? You know
Bob
what I
must
mean?
have felt the only way that he was going to go down for this was basically Gentz's testimony against him, and so he tried to cut the middleman out and just take care of that. He basically went to a business acquaintance who I think was like a furniture guy and asked him for help
That's what I
knocking
heard,
someone
too.
off. Yeah, he went to this guy and, hey, this guy that he kind of knew, who he heard
Right.
supposedly did some stuff, and asked him to help knock someone off that's behind bars. The man went straight to the police, who then had the man wear a wire for their next meeting. And they had all they needed to take Bob in and lock him up for a while on that while they work on the murder case of Jane. And
Right.
and so December 21st, Joe Gentz would plead guilty to second-degree murder in Jane Bashara's death, and he would end up being sentenced 2 months later to 17 to 28 years in prison for Jane Bashara's death. Bob's trial, however, was not a speedy process for anyone. He was arraigned on charges including conspiracy to commit murder, solicitation to commit murder, perjury, witness intimidation, and obstruction of justice in his wife's death. He still pleaded not guilty, even though all of the evidence pointed against him. Now with his ex-mistress, his kids, his ex-hitman all agreeing to testify against him, the district court judge finally decided to make Bob stand for trial for his wife's murder on September 24th, 2014. So, yeah, they didn't have much in the way of physical evidence, but all of the witness to the murder itself, the one that actually did the murdering, and then also all the character witnesses, the fact that his own kids would testify against him, the mistresses
Right.
with all the dark other side of Bob, they felt they finally had enough to put him in trial for this.
And then the fact that he tried to have Joe Gentz killed in prison. I mean,
Yeah.
that is a definite.
Yeah, right.
That really happened. Like
Right.
you can't. That's the most damning thing for me. It's like once that happened, I'm like, yeah, let him stand trial. I mean, how's he going to win this shit? Why
Very
else
true.
would you need the man killed? I mean,
Very true. The trial officially began on October 7th and ran until December 8th. Rachel Gillett and Joe Gentz both had valuable testimonies, but the most eye-opening of all were Bashara's children's testimonies. Jessica and
agree.
Robert told of how Bashara had tried to mask his fascination in adultery with his erectile dysfunction, even when they were in high school. They also
or
told about
vice versa, right?
what do
He
you
tried
mean?
to mask his erectile dysfunction with his fascination with adultery.
Yeah, like
Right.
that's some of the stuff. Like when his daughter would witness him looking at pornography and stuff like that, he would basically say he would blame it on the erectile dysfunction.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Yeah,
I see what you're saying. So he was open about having ED.
yeah,
but
pretty much.
okay, all right.
They also talked about their father's greed and how Jane had an $800,000 life insurance policy that he was trying to cash in on. The trial exposed the dark side of Bob. To attract like-minded women, Bob advertised himself on lifestyle websites like alt.com. And we have a quote from his profile. Quote, "Welcome to my world. I am Master Bob, a complete trainer." He announced describing himself as a, quote, male dominant from Eastside, Michigan, 6'3", 250 pounds, 50 years old. "I will open, train, and guide you in this lifestyle. Kneel and have all your desires and cravings open to you. I will make you love and enjoy the lovely mix of moderate pain and pleasure." Moderate, yeah.
Moderate. Hilarious.
On trial, Bob Bashara said his wife knew but didn't have a take. She didn't want to know about it. "I did my thing, she did hers, and she gave me the freedom to do what I wanted." Jane, though she told
now
her
that you can
friend,
speak for her.
what's that?
Now that you can speak for her, I guess that's what she
I
said.
know, right?
It's
Yeah, she doesn't have to say
Pointless.
anymore because you killed her.
right.
Jane, though, told her friends that her husband was addicted to pornography and was plagued by erectile dysfunction. As part of his role as a dominant witness in preliminary hearings, said breath play, choking out a partner until she is on the brink of unconsciousness was part of his sexual repertoire. Quote, "I was not into breath play," Bashara said. "Did I ever try it? Absolutely. But it wasn't the thrust of any relationship."
Right. It's just how I say hello.
It's just, when dogs
not
walk
actually
up
part
and they
of it.
sniff each other's butts, it's kind of like how
Yeah.
things started with us too.
I just like to choke out a girl. That way I can get her right where I need her.
Right.
You
Just
know?
let her know. Just let her know I am Master Bob right off the bat.
Jesus.
Bashara is resolute. He is innocent, himself a victim against violent crime. The lifestyle the prosecution vows as part of the case is a smokescreen for its lack of evidence, he says. Quote, "With this lifestyle, my goal was to help these women so that they are not abused," Bashara said. "You have guys that want rough sex in the name of this lifestyle. They don't want to know the code. They aren't true to the lifestyle. They don't know how to handle the equipment. A submissive woman is a strong woman. She has to have some strength to her." And he's everything that he's talking about other men being. He was this fucking asshole that didn't play by the rules.
He didn't know the code. He wasn't there long enough. He wasn't true to the lifestyle. He probably didn't know how to handle the equipment. Well, I don't know. Maybe he knew how to handle the equipment. Who knows? I mean, he put it all up probably.
Right.
But But yeah, he was definitely someone who just wanted rough sex in the name of the lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's what it seemed to me.
So on December 18th, 2014, after 4 days of deliberation and shuffling through the heap of evidence against Bob, the jury finally convicted Bashara of first-degree murder. And on January 15, 2015, a month later, Bob Bashara was sentenced to life without parole, where he remains behind bars to this day.
Gosh, good for him. Hope he stays.
Yep. Hopefully someone's his master in there. That'd be great, right? Against his own will. That'd be ironic.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't know how men like him are treated. It's like technically he killed his wife, but I mean, I guess he didn't physically do it. I guess that makes him even more of a bitch in prison, huh?
Yeah, I don't know. He's an old, decrepit man, so he ain't mastering anybody in there. I'll tell you that.
No. And he's lost a lot of weight since he's been in there too.
Oh, has he? Have you seen like a recent picture?
Yeah, I saw. Well, they did a. He had a parole hearing, didn't he? Or not a parole hearing, but they had a retrial like later, right before he was. I guess that would be 2015. So, shit, that's been 5 years. 2015 still seems so recent to me.
Right.
Yeah, it's been 5 years. But I guess he's still locked up, huh?
Yeah, and I think Joe
died,
Gentz, didn't Joe Gentz come out after he was convicted and everything and say that he recanted his story and said that he actually Bob didn't pay him to kill Jane or whatever? I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Well, he tried to do that, but then once the judge was like, you do understand what you're doing, you're admitting to lying in a court of law, and it's like, you will never get out of prison. Do you understand that? And he was like, oh, I do now. Actually, yeah, he did tell me to kill her.
Take backsies.
You know, just kidding. Can I go back to my cell? Is that an option? What are we having for lunch?
Sounds great.
Just
Cool.
go ahead and head on out of here.
Pea soup? All right, that works.
I was just kidding, guys. Just wanted to get some fresh air. Hope you guys are doing well.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Speaking about a breath of fresh air, man.
Yeah, I was going to say it. I was going to use that same segue. Speaking of a fresh
were
breath
you?
of fresh air.
Man, dude, we've been doing this a while.
Yeah, we know each other.
I know you were going to talk about Oh My Gaia and what a breath of fresh air your armpits are.
They are.
Weren't you?
They are.
Dude, they are. And if you guys don't have fresh armpits, then you probably don't know about Oh My Gaia, which is an innovative, all-natural deodorant, fragrance, and beard oil company specializing in paraben and aluminum-free products. Their innovative line of deodorants inhibit the growth of odor-causing bacteria while maintaining effectiveness. At Oh My Gaia, they use only all-natural, paraben, and aluminum-free organic ingredients. You know something I hear a lot? I hear that people are like, oh, I've just tried a lot of organic deodorants, and they just don't work. They just don't work. Like, I smell a little bit later. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I smell at the end of the day, or I'm still sweating. Well, first off, it's not an antiperspirant, right? That's the first shock, I think, for a lot of people. Because anything that's, you're supposed to sweat, right? You're supposed to sweat, people. You're not supposed to clog pores. That's bad for you. But with Oh My Gaia, the deodorant does, the scent lasts all day. And it's in your shirt. It's in your, I rub some on my chest. You know what I mean? Collarbone, whatever you got around that area, and it just smells great, I think, and it's not overpowering. You know what I mean? It's not like you walk into a room and people are going, God damn, what are you wearing? You know? But it's
almost like the scent comes to life as you sweat just a little bit. It kind of like livens the scent up, and it becomes even stronger, and it's like you smell better.
I agree. That's exactly what happens. And guys, there's tons of scents to choose from. There's definitely a scent for you. There's vanilla, cherry almond, sandalwood, lavender, lemongrass, Egyptian musk, one of my favorites. I'm wearing that today. Coconut, dreamsicle, leather, lumberjack, honeysuckle, fireside, bergamot, amber. And then we have our own scent called True Crime Pine. Has our old school podcast logo, if you guys remember from back in the day. We still have the mugshot thing, but it's changed a little bit. But our first logo is the sticker that seals that jar shut, and it's on True Crime Pine. And because you're True Crime Guys listeners, you can use the code word CREEPER, CREEPER, and you can get 15% off your order at ohmygaia.com. That's OHMYGAIA.com or at shop_ohmygaia on Instagram.
I can only speak to my personal experience with Oh My Gaia and my wife. We both absolutely love it. And also the people that I know personally that have tried it, like my cousin and his girlfriend, they're all about it. We were just talking about it the other night. Like they have several different scents. They love it. They actually went out of their way to tell me. They're like, oh my God, man, it's the best. So, and
very affordable too. You're not going to find a better price deodorant for the amount that you get in these jars. And then you're getting an extra 15% off.
Yep.
So it's
a win-win. Can't
No,
lose.
I got like 6 cents laying on my dresser right now. Like,
Right.
It's just how it is, man.
All right. Well, I want to thank the people who have gone and taken time to write a review and rate us 5 stars on iTunes and Stitcher and all that. Since the last episode, we've got some people to shout out for that. I want to say thank you to
Nice.
Happy Bird 2. Said freeloader love and rated 5 stars. How in the heck are you
Word.
guys not in the top 200? I don't know. I don't get that.
I don't know. And then somebody else left us a review and said, definitely a top 200 podcast. And I was like, thanks.
Right.
I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, I know they meant well, obviously. But, we'd like to be a little higher than that. But we're definitely top 200.
I'd be happy to be in the top 200, but we're fucking not. I
Yeah.
don't get it. Bees Markey said all the stars, 5 stars. Thank you. Bailey said love the show, 5 stars. Haley Gashko, you make me look forward to waking up for work, 5 stars. Those are some of my favorite. When
Yeah.
people say that we help them get through their day. That's awesome.
Yeah, I know how that feels, man. When you have that podcast that you're looking forward to listening to, it just makes the time go by.
Yep.
You know, it really does. It really helps.
It's like you're hanging out with some friends.
That's right.
Let's see. Why do you guys got to make the hardest shit to read?
Shadowlack, bro. Shadowlack.
Shabinjada. I don't know.
Are you looking at
everything you want
Shadowlack?
in a TC podcast? Huh?
Which one are you looking at?
The one below that.
Oh,
Shibindija.
Scheiben. Yeah. Okay.
Everything you want in a true crime podcast, 5 stars. Thank you. Shadowlack, that one's easy enough. 5 stars.
Yeah.
Definitely a top 200 podcast. Thank you.
Right.
Kat Sandra said best true crime podcast, 5 stars. Thank you.
Nice. All right.
I did like the comment though too that Kat Sandra said, quote, Michael during Chris Watts episode, I could never pressure into anyone into buying something ever. Also, Michael during another episode. Hey, yeah, freeloaders.
Fair enough. But also, who's pressured by that? Like, I'm not
I know,
even in
right?
the same
But
room
it's
with
all-
you. But it's funny.
Yeah,
though.
it's all tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
If you want to be a part of the party over at patreon.com/truecrimeguys and you want to
Yeah.
give us $2 a month, you're more than welcome to do that. But
Right.
you also don't have to do that, and we don't hold anything against you if you don't.
Right. That's right. That's
We
right.
might just come up behind and do a little breath play on you, and next thing you know, you're unconscious. It's no problem.
And then we took your phone and signed you up for Patreon and put it back in your
Yeah,
pocket.
Exactly. Swipe your card. Send you a gold sticker, and you're
Right.
happy.
And then
In
you're
the end,
happy.
really, that's all
See?
that matters.
That's what you wanted all along, and you just didn't know it. True Crime Guys knows.
Yeah, we know what's best for you.
That's right. That's right. Oh, right, man. Well, this was a fun case. This was a good one.
I know. I agree. I like it. Thank you to the person who recommended this. Was it? I almost said Rachel Calbot.
What's a cowboy?
Isn't that the Jennifer Karabot? Thank you.
Oh, there you go.
For recommending that.
Yes, thank you very
All
much.
right, guys.
That's it.
Thank you for tuning in. Keep creeping. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, do we got a Patreon episode coming up?
It's got to be right.
It's got to be. This is
Gotta
like
be
our
time.
third freeloader or something in a row. So we gotta give the Patreon some love, patrons.
Yeah. So now's the time. Now's the time if you're gonna join the creep party and jump in the creep van with us and get all that awesome bonus content over at patreon.com/truecrimeguys. Do it now because next week's an exclusive episode that you won't get to hear for another 2 years if you're lucky.
Yeah, maybe not even that. Who knows? Maybe we don't release anymore.
Yeah.
So that way it's worth it, you know?
Right.
I'm kidding. I'm bitter. I'm sorry. Some people get
Stop
under my
taking shots
skin.
at the-
Some people get under my skin. It's all good.
All right. See you next week.
Yep.
Keep creeping.
Keep creeping, guys.
True crime guys, in the desert we like a mirage. It's okay if you clicked on us cause you thought we was True Crime Garage. Now we ain't mad at you, sit down, let us talk at you. I'm talking to the creeper army, we out here making murder, get murder, get murder. True crime guys, in the desert we like a mirage. It's okay if you clicked on us cause you thought we was True Crime Garage. Now we ain't mad at you, sit down, let us talk at you. I'm talking to the creeper army, we out here making murder charming.